meeting of the Vale of Whitehorse District Council General Licensing Committee. I'm Councillor Batson and I will be chairing this meeting. This meeting is being held at our office in Abbey House, Abingdon. Voting members are here in person if required, but officers and public speakers are able to join remotely if they wish through Microsoft Teams. The meeting is being recorded. Procedural matters I think we can pass through, and we've already had housekeeping announcements, so I won't repeat those. Do we have apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Councillors Patrick O'Leary and Val Shaw.
The committee is asked to adopt and agree for me to sign as a correct record the minutes of the committee meeting on the 9th of July 2025. Do we have a proposer and seconder? Proposer Councillor Paula, seconder Councillor Goma. A long time ago. Is that, can we have a vote on that?
Yes, agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest?
No.
I have no items of urgent business, but we do have public participation. Ward Councillor Robert Clegg has registered to speak to the committee in relation to item 8, which I will now say that I'm going to move to be item 7. So I'm going to deal with the air quality first. So, Councillor Clegg, if you'd like to speak.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you also for moving us around. I need to do the school run at 3 o'clock, so it's very kind of you to move the agenda around. As I'm sure the committee is aware, I'm both the Cabinet member responsible for air quality monitoring and also the ward member for Marcham. But I'll be speaking to you today primarily in this latter role, since we also have officers present who I'm sure will do an excellent job of introducing the paper and answering any technical questions you may have. Now, the reason we have an air quality management area, an AQMA, in Marcham is mostly because of the A415 road through the centre of the village, and especially because of the narrow pinch point just to the east of the Crown Public House, where the walls of houses butt right up against the sides of the road, on both sides of the road, almost directly opposite each other. Those houses are still very much there, and there are still issues with traffic flow through that pinch point. I understand conversations are ongoing within the County Council about how this situation might be improved, with ideas such as an HGV ban being discussed. OCC also measures traffic volumes at points along the A415 just to the east and to the west of the village. Now, this difficult traffic situation can cause air quality issues, and it's for this reason that air quality monitoring equipment was installed, with a particular focus on monitoring nitrogen dioxide, or NO2. Fortunately, the levels of NO2 are now comfortably below the air quality objectives set by central government, and they are also declining year on year. This is probably due to the improved efficiency of internal combustion engines and to the accelerating uptake of hybrid and electric vehicles. On the other hand, there are some concerns on the horizon. Around 600 homes are to be built soon near Kingston Bagbuys, and so we may see an increase in traffic along the A415 through Marcham as a result. Secondly, of course, Thames Water would very much like to build a huge reservoir on land to the south of Marcham. Although construction traffic shouldn't be travelling through Marcham Village, we all know how problematic the A34 can be. And there will also be times when the wind blows from the Cesro site north to the village. For all these reasons, I'm very happy to see that air quality monitoring will continue in Marcham regardless of the legal status. So revoking this AQMA means that very little will change from a practical perspective on the ground, or perhaps I should say in the air. I had a great conversation with officers about this topic yesterday, and they're all very aware of concerns that residents and Marcham Parish Council have about this topic. It's my view, within both my roles, that air quality monitoring should continue regardless of the AQMA status, and I'll be pushing for that as long as I serve in at least one of those roles. That's all I have to say, so thank you for your time and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Clegg. Do we have any questions for Councillor Clegg? In that case, I'll move on to officers.
I think Scott Williams is doing that. piece was online.
Oh, right. So, can I move on to Scott Williams then, who's giving the presentation here?
Yeah, absolutely, Chair. Thank you. So yeah, I'll just set out an introduction, and then I'm joined by Simon and Carmen, who are in the room with you, who can take any specific specific or technical questions. So, as Councillor Clegg has set out, the council has a legal duty to assess and manage air quality in the district and declare air quality management areas (AQMAs) when national objectives aren't being met, and revoking them when compliance is achieved. The report that you have before you sets out formal approval to revoke the Marcham Air Quality Management Area, which has met national air quality objectives since 2020. By approving this revocation, the council will comply with DEFRA's technical guidance, which we must follow. It will also recognise the sustained improvements in local air quality achieved in Marcham. In the report itself, included with the agenda, you'll see the relevant scientific data which supports the recommendation, and also DEFRA's agreement to proceed with this step. In conclusion, the evidence clearly shows that Marcham has consistently met national air quality objectives for several years, and the council now has this duty to revoke the AQMA. This decision, supported by DEFRA, reflects the positive progress made in improving air quality in the district. As Councillor Clegg set out, while the AQMA will be formally revoked, the council will continue to monitor local air quality in Marcham. So, the diffusion tubes that are used in that area won't go away. They will still be in place. And I therefore recommend that the licensing committee formally approve the revocation of the Marcham Air Quality Management Area. So, as I say, Chair, happy to take any questions, supported by Simon and Carmen.
Do we have any questions? Councillor Thomas was first.
I was just curious because it's really interesting, and I was just wondering. So when it was declared, how high was it above the standard?
It's in the report.
Yeah.
3.9
3.9. Yeah, I
in
hadn't seen it.
2006.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Apologies. And I was wondering also, I mean, CESRO and other things aside, is it likely to increase again?
I don't think yet. I think with the move to EVs in the clinic,
Yeah, you think
there's no
that's the main.
assumptions. I don't think it's going to increase anywhere near the current threshold. Whether or not DEFRA or Central Government decide to change that, but we'll look at that as and when that changes, if it does.
Oops.
Councillor Porter.
Yes, I'm pleased, as Councillor Clegg remarked, to hear that the monitoring equipment will be available. In what circumstances could that monitoring equipment be removed? In other words, would that be something that officers could do, or is that something that would require agreement from councillors?
It'll be ultimately sort of an offer decision, but that'll be done with our cabinet member discussion. But I think from a realistic viewpoint, if levels continue to drop down to almost insignificant distinguishable background levels, that may be a point to reduce. But there'll always be a certain amount of measurements going on in March, and just given the geography of the road in that pinch point, and it makes sense to stay there given the long-term view. But I suppose it's if the legislation changes or the criteria changes, they may come out, but that can be a discussion we'll have our cabinet members, so they'll be aware of those discussions and mindsets and some ideas anyway.
So can we take that as an undertaking that it will remain unless it reaches some sort of very negligible level?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Porter.
I was going to make a similar point. I mean, I think that the report makes it very clear that there was an approach to this that's been more than 5 years, well below the level, and therefore we should make this decision. But with I would add a caveat to that given the comments that have been made about the potential impact of CESRO traffic and other local traffic issues that many of us are aware of, it would make sense to keep the monitors there for the time being, keep an eye on the levels, and I personally would prefer, if it's clear that they're not going to be removed anytime soon.
Councillor Wakeman.
Good to hear Councillor Clegg's. So the problem with NOx is NOx will continue to decline nationally because of the switchover of powertrains in vehicles. But the killer to public health is particulate matter, so PM 2.5, PM 10. So which I imagine, Rob, that if you got a PM 2.5 counter, I imagine it's beyond DEFRA or World Health Organization.
There
It's got
was
to be.
a centre in Markham a couple of years ago, which monitored NO2 levels of particulates, and the levels that it registered were well below the objectives.
I'd be
as well.
amazed if it
I
was
can, yeah.
because the problem now is where you've got an increase in alternative emission vehicles, particulate matter is actually higher in zero emission vehicles than it is in ICE vehicles
Yeah,
because of the weight of the vehicles.
Because there is this correlation between NO2 and PM levels, because they do come from similar sources,
Secondary
and
PM levels, yeah.
we can more or less understand what the PM levels are looking at the NOx. And also there was this centre a couple of years ago, which again verified almost the fact that the results we're getting from the diffusion tubes were very similar to what the centre was recording. There aren't currently any issues about particulates in Markham not meeting the objectives.
There's a fantastic piece of equipment called Purple Earth. There's many others. It's the cheapest and the most open source cloud option. I think as a council, we should be measuring particulate matter. I understand, and in fact, if you look at obviously World Health Organization targets against DEFRA are completely different. Because actually, if you look at the WHO targets for per microgram, we're only just in some of the areas of that WHO target. The rest we're over. And I just think, in an area where you have such a pinch, and also we have such a potential headache on the horizon with CESRO. So in chapter 13 of the latest consultation document for air quality for CESRO, it's already showing that NOx, because it's unlikely by that point for some of the heavy earth moving equipment that they have, particulate matter will be high because of silicon bound particulate matter. So, we've got big problems coming with regards to air quality. I'm glad to hear the diffusion tube's going to stay. I would like to see this council, and it was one of the things I suggested when I was a cabinet member, start to look more seriously at particulate matter, because for those deaths that have been recorded now that are air quality deaths, it's not because of NOx, it's because of particulate matter. So I just think whilst DEFRA is way behind the World Health Organization, I kind of feel as a progressive council we should be ahead.
We are governed by DEFRA in relation to what we do in relation to air quality and where we need to achieve. There is a broader county council strategy which we feed into, which is with LGR on the horizon. It's paused, but that is very much a piece to pick up the emerging issue of particulate matter. So I think it's not anything we're planning to monitor in the shorter term, but it's something we obviously take away and discuss outside this, and obviously liaise with our cabinet member and talk about those bits. But I think it's something for us. We're aware that PM is the emerging pollutant, but it's something we're keeping an eye on, watching brief on, if that makes sense.
It's not emerging, though, it's here. It's
Well,
very
yes,
much here.
but
So it's one thing for us to celebrate the movement to zero emission powertrains, but that brings with it its own problems, because mobility generally, if we keep using private cars, is going to keep bringing problems. So, Councillor Clegg, I'm always happy to talk about air quality. I feel like I've swallowed more reports in the last 6 months than I need to. But my stress and worry for Marcham is what is definitely coming on the horizon as well. And, where those nodal points are, you've got a lot of young children, the school crossing. I'm always worried about taking away something which could easily be reversed tomorrow. It's, that becomes a rat run because, the 338 is at capacity or the 34 is at capacity.
I think where nitrogen dioxide is, the AQMA has declared nitrogen dioxide solely nitrogen dioxide. I'm aware of the PM elements, but I think we need, if things do change, I don't think it's going to happen from a NOx viewpoint, as you pointed out. I think if things do change, the PM view will also be monitoring that and continue to keep an eye on watching brief. If PM emerges as more of an issue, that's something we can explore.
I just think, and as you've got the leader here, if you set the ambition of being a progressive council and you want to set the ambition for doing the right thing by residents always round, and with climate, at the forefront, I kind of feel that we shouldn't have to worry. Whilst this is what DEFRA says, why can't we better than DEFRA? Why can't we set ourselves a new benchmark to World Health Organization standards?
Sorry, thank you, Councillor Whiteman. I'm an air quality business. I would be happy to talk about that, and I know a lot of things about that. However, it's slightly outside of this item scope, so I suggest we return back to the item, and then you were just again.
Yes, I think that was perhaps a useful discussion, but you're right, it isn't directly, but pertain to what we're trying to do today. The other comment I might make, because it was part of the report, is that Botley is still
Yes.
a problem.
Well, yeah, it's improving, but it's not been below the threshold for long enough to be considering revocation. So the hope is in a couple of years' time it may well be, but for the moment, yeah, Botley remains as an HMA for the foreseeable until we've got adequate
Yeah, I see
data.
there are a couple of sites where it's still actually on the level, so that Botley is still a problem. Just to know that. Any further questions?
Mine's probably related to that in the fact just to unpack slightly the financial implications. I take it that because Botley's still an issue, that the funding remains. Is that correct?
Well, there's no real sort of funding
Yeah,
around
there's no
HMAs,
exactly, yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
it sits with National Highways to address their quality in Botley.
Yeah.
I think they're of the view that over recent years it's been compliant, and so that's where they are. But it's something we can continue those discussions with Highways England in relation to quite along that section of the main road, because it is our remaining, or in theory our remaining HMA. But yeah, it doesn't bring any additional funding, but it helps flag it with other agencies who are responsible for air quality as part of their board traffic management remit.
Thank you.
The question, Councillor Thomas.
I think that was a really useful discussion, and that's lots of things to note there. And I do appreciate what's been said. But yeah, ultimately, I would like to thank officers for continuing this work. I'd like to thank officers again for making sure that this will continue to be in place and monitored. I think that's really helpful. And given the pressures on Marcham, and we drive through Marcham quite a lot on our way to Abbey House, so we do appreciate the pinch points. I'm very glad it is continuing to be monitored. So I'd like to thank officers, and also Councillor Clegg for coming in and putting his views of residents forward.
I'd like to say that I don't have to go through Marcham so often these days because I don't need to go down to the beacon. So there we are. That's
You won't ever have
a good thing. A good thing.
I would like to say that I quite liked meetings at the beacon because it was closer to me.
I like going to Robin Marcham. Generally discussing travel habits.
Haven't been there yet anyway.
It's very friendly.
Any more questions or debate on the air quality management? In that case, the recommendation is for the committee to agree to formally revoke the Marcham air quality management area. Please could I have a proposer? Councillor Thomas proposes, Councillor Ford seconds. Can we have a vote on that? Any against? Abstention? Agreed then. In that case, could we? I've got to look at my script because, of course, we're now back to taxi licensing.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you very much.
So I'll now hand over the report to Laura again. I assume is waiting online.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Sorry, I was just giving them a minute to leave the room. Thank you.
Sorry, I should have talked about switching the items, which I didn't. So sorry about that.
That's fine. So the purpose of this report is to bring before you a first draft of a revised taxi policy prior to a consultation exercise. As you'll see from the report, our current policy was published in June 2021. There are broadly 3 categories of change in the table at Appendix B. A number of the changes come from the revised publication of the Department for Transport's best practice guidance, which is supplementary to their statutory standards. As the DFT expects their standards to be implemented unless there's a compelling local reason not to, that's their wording, the consultation will make it very clear that the respondents should focus their comments on any compelling local reasons why we should digress from their best practice guidance as well. Some of the proposed changes offer guidance only or to clarify points of existing law or practice. It's not felt that any of those changes are in any way controversial. As an example of those, the use of any registered doctor for taxi medicals, provided they have access to the person's records. That's been implemented for a number of years now, and sort of follows on from the tail end of COVID, where not all GPs were doing taxi medicals. And the final category of changes would be those we'd suggest on a local level. One of those, the mandatory acceptance of card payments, was a suggestion that was made during the consultation during our last review back in 2020-2021. Officers are of the view that the proposed policy strikes a balance between the need to protect the public, ensure we meet our safeguarding responsibilities, our corporate priorities, and the need to allow reasonable time to phase in some of those changes for existing licence holders. The consultation will allow for any additional suggestions to be made and be open to stakeholders, surrounding local authorities and the public, in addition to the licensed trade. And just to confirm, we've already met with the South and Vale Taxi Driver Association to discuss the proposals. We will bring back a further report to the committee in due course with the results of the consultation and a final draft of the policy for consideration at that point. I don't think I've got anything further to add, but happy to take any questions.
Do we have any questions?
Through the chair, Laura, thank you very much. I sit on quite a lot of licensing panels from time to time, but I can't remember that we've had one to deal with non-compliance by taxes recently, have we?
That is correct, yes. We haven't had one since COVID.
Which is really good, obviously. Are there any points in our policy where there is substantial non-compliance by licensed taxi drivers with our policy?
Do you mean sort of applications we get from people who aren't compliant? So say, for example, somebody's got a criminal conviction, something like that?
Well, no, I'm thinking, yes, that sort of thing. But I was thinking more general, if there's anything specific to the area, if you know what I mean, if anything stands out. It doesn't look as though it does from the look on your face. But...
No, I wouldn't say so. No, I don't think we're sort of we have anything unusual to South and Vale specifically. Not to the best of my knowledge.
So, in terms of this policy, or because of the environment, it's quite a safe environment as far as regards taxi services, in fact.
I would suggest, yeah, officers work really hard to make sure that we don't license anybody who is unsuitable, and that we deal with any complaints about licensed drivers, any concerns. The one thing that I would say actually that works really, really well in our area is information sharing with the other district councils and the county council. So I had a phone call with the LADO just this morning over concerns about somebody they thought might have been a licensed driver in our area, thankfully who isn't. But, it's good that they're able to sort of just send an email and get a response the same day to confirm that, so they can move on and try and find out where that person is licensed. So it does work really well. And yeah, we try to make sure, and it's not to say the policy is not a set in stone kind of thing. And I think it sort of is clear within the document. The policy is the starting point. But if anybody wants us to digress from the policy, anybody wants us to issue a license when they're not compliant, they'd have to give us a really good reason to do that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's correct. Now, I did pick up when I was looking at this policy that to the extent that taxes were suitable for disabled people, some criteria might be waived. I was wondering exactly what criteria could be waived in those circumstances. I mean, I understand the reason for that, but I'm just wondering whether it does have add a risk in terms of the policy.
The only thing that really comes to mind might be, say, for example, where it's a slightly older vehicle, maybe it's a month older than the Euro 6 date starts, something like that. Is without sort of wanting to predetermine it, that might be something we might consider. For example, if it's a specialist vehicle that is particularly suitable, because it can be quite hard to find those vehicles.
Okay, so it's very much at the margin.
Yeah, it's not that we would find a vehicle that was totally unsuitable and in all other respects and license it. It's just where it's something where it's more borderline maybe.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Laura, hey, Laura. On 7.17, so we discuss it's a Euro 6 standards. How often does DFT reissue this guidance? Like,
the best practice guidance had not been prior to the one that was just been done. It was a long time ago. It was a
Right.
large number of years ago. You may have seen in recent days, and I haven't sort of covered this, is in recent days we've received a consultation which may move taxi licensing to strategic authority level in due course. That's being considered. So there are potentially bigger changes on the horizon in respect of taxi licensing. So I would assume if those changes do go ahead in some years' time, they might consider reissuing the guidance at that point, because there will be far fewer licensing authorities.
Obviously, just noting the point around the Euro 6 standardisation. So obviously Euro 7 starts in, I think, November this year on a rollout. So our trigger point then is we have to wait for the DFT to trigger point down.
We don't have to wait for it. Yeah. Our suggestion to stay with Euro 6 came from our climate team. It came from within the council, if that makes sense. So
which I totally agree with. But with 7 coming, when we get to a point where we would review, say, in 5 years and look at the propagation of, zero emission vehicles versus Euro 7 and the fade out of Euro 6, and see if we make a standardisation at that point.
The other thing that could potentially be considered as well is we've also already got the discount on our licence fee for zero emission vehicles. So there's a currently one, whether, and this is something throwing an idea out there which you might want to consider, given you set the fees for future, is that you might suggest an in the middle figure in respect of Euro 7 vehicles to try and persuade those licence holders to move to Euro 7. There's lots of different ways of getting to the target, but
okay, awesome. But it's they trigger down, we can still make some of our own key decisions.
Yes,
awesome.
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? In that case, let's go to the recommendation.
Might I be allowed to make?
Oh yes, of course, Andrew. Sorry.
Thank you. It's really just a comment and doesn't require an answer, but I'm although it's clearly very good, the information sharing and useful, but I suppose I'm surprised in this digital age that the holders of taxi licenses are not on a database that anybody could interrogate.
There would be a certain level of concern for sharing personal data. What we do have is a register, it's a national register of anybody who has been suspended, revoked or refused, which enables us to check, so that's checked routinely for all new applicants, all renewal applicants, to make sure they haven't been in trouble elsewhere, basically. So, and if they have, to go and ask that licensing authority. So we do check that for every single person. So whilst we don't have everybody on a national database, the ones who might be problematic are on a database.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Chair, can I just
ask,
and it might be, sorry if I'm totally wrong here, but in Farringdon, which is my ward, we have now access to Uber, which we didn't have access to before. I take it they don't fall under private hire, or do they?
They are private hire, so they're licensed by Oxford City as a private hire operator,
Under
and they
Oxford
use
City.
they use Oxford City licensed vehicles and drivers to fulfil those bookings. So yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to be clarified that they weren't fail. That's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, no, they've not applied to us as it stands.
They're definitely increasingly here.
Yes, that's why I asked the question. Yeah.
Councillor Thomas.
I just wanted to thank officers for the amount of work that's gone into it.
Indeed, yes.
It's clear that it is it has been a lot of work, and it's really good again to see the clarity that's coming through, just to make sure that the regulations are obvious for users and residents and providers as well.
Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to endorse that. So let us go to the recommendation. The committee, in this case, is recommended to consider the draft revised joint taxi licensing policy at Appendix A, and subject to any further amendments, which we haven't suggested today, approve a consultation exercise to seek the views of the public, trade and relevant stakeholders on the revised policy. Please could I have a proposer? Councillor Forder, a seconder? Councillor Whiteman? Can we have a vote on that?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Laura. I think we can close the meeting then.
Lovely.
Good.